Good morning, and welcome to Unfiltered News. Good morning, and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Thank you so much for joining me this morning on Mighty Men Thursday, and it is open mic, so if any of our men out there would like to come on the broadcast, we can discuss whatever topic you would like, or some of the events that I've been covering this week, or even in this broadcast. You can email me at unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com, or you can send me a direct message on X. My handle is It's Our Turn RP. So with that, let's get into our Kids Corner.
Big wins, trophies, medals, and awards, but he had nothing to celebrate, and that made him feel small. Grandpa Henry noticed Brooks's frown. He smiled and said, "You don't need a trophy to celebrate. Find something small, just for you." Brooks thought hard. He had helped his little sister with homework and learned to tie his shoes perfectly. Maybe that was worth celebrating. Excited, Brooks and Grandpa Henry walked to a small bakery. Brooks picked his favorite cupcake. "This is my celebration," he said. They sat on a park bench enjoying their treats. "Even small things matter," Grandpa said. Brooks smiled, feeling proud of himself. Brooks decided he'd celebrate small things often. "Next time, I'll celebrate helping Mom or learning a new word," he said. Brooks learned that big wins aren't the only things that matter. Sometimes the little victories bring the greatest joy. Celebrate the small things in life. Every step forward, no matter how tiny, is worth appreciating. Find joy in your own little victories.
Yes, find joy in the small victories, because the large victories will come. They will. So don't worry. But small victories are awesome. So let's make sure that we celebrate those. And with that, good morning, Spud McKenzie. Thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News. And let's get into honoring God with our body. So God, please guard our mind and our thoughts. God, help me to fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So I will think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please protect our ears and help us listen to your voice. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, please protect my eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please speak life over my mouth. God, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. God, please help our hands to serve generously. God, help me to do good to everyone and especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. God, please protect our reproductive organs and help us to honor you, God, with purity. God, help me to honor you with my body. And God, please protect our feet and help us walk along your path. God, let your word be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. And if you are just joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News this morning, that is a prayer that we say every day just to get our hearts and our minds set right for the day. And so we are honoring God with our bodies. So, with that, let's get into the news. It's been an amazing day, and amen. Absolutely. Yes, bud. Thank you so much for that. So, here we go. Y'all, it's, let's just get it. That's all I got to say. Let's just get into it. Okay, so apparently, there are sirens and they are blaring nonstop in Georgia, and locals say this is not normal. So, a man filming in Marietta says these alarms have been going all day nonstop. He's been in the same area for around 15 to 20 years and says he's never heard anything like this before. Officials are saying it's a part of a controlled simulation at Dobbins Air Reserve Base and that it doesn't indicate an emergency. But people there aren't buying it. He says they do occasional tests and they don't ever sound like this. This just keeps going with sirens and announcements over and over. And right before the video cuts, he says he, it he says it like he's already made up his mind. Y'all get ready. Not like a guess, like he knows something the rest of us don't. So let's check out this video.
Non-stop, all day. Alarms, announcements. You can't tell me this is normal. I've been working out here for 15, 20 years, right on this stretch of 41. I could hear this. They do a test Wednesday. Every once in a while, there's something random. This shit is not normal. Y'all get ready.
Yeah. So I ran it through Grok because I was like, what's going on? You know, and it says, yes, it's officially confirmed as a routine test simulation, no emergency, right? And so the facts from local news and officials, this is a routine training at Dobbins Air Reserve Base using the Giant Voice outdoor warning system to simulate realistic scenarios for readiness drills. Well, who else is a part of the scenario? Because the locals are kind of like, this is just annoying. And some people are like, should we be concerned? I'm not hearing anything at all because I'm like almost an hour south. So I'm out of the loop altogether. Have no idea, have no clue, right? So it was pre announced around March 11th and was scheduled through the end of that week. So March 18th fell right in the middle of it. Now, Cobb County Emergency Management Agency and the base explicitly told residents these sirens are not a malfunction, not county tornado sirens, and do not signal any real incident. Real emergencies would come through official alerts only. Nearby residents, including on Reddit and local X posts, confirmed hearing the same upgraded sirens during these exact drills. Some noted the test can run for hours or multiple days. Now, there was a Fox 5 Atlanta, Cobb County Government and Emergency Management Agency Facebook statements, and Marietta Daily Journal coverage of the exercise. Again, all that stuff is north of where I'm at. That's so you've got 75, 85 south, you've got 75, 85 north. You got this big gigantic circle called 285. Right. So Marietta sits kind of like right outside of 285. So they're just kind of right there north. Yeah. So, and then of course, it tells me, oh, well, you're in Stockbridge. So any sound wouldn't reach you strongly anyway. Should I be concerned is the question. Like if something's going, if you're practicing, you're practicing for something because we all hear it. It isn't like it's a siren that's going off on anybody's like body pack, or if it's just, isolated to the base, surround the city that people can hear. You did a test for a whole week. So obviously, everybody should be concerned or at least know what you're supposed to do. So it said, what emergency are they testing for? And what do people need to do so they are prepared? At least, right? The sirens and giant voice announcements in the video, right, are part of a routine training exercise at the Air Reserve Base, specifically tied to Patriot Forge 2026, a week-long Air Force Reserve drill focused on readiness in realistic scenarios. What are these realistic scenarios? I guess that's my question. Because realistic would be like, okay, something tragic would happen over here, right? So, officials describe it as testing airmen's readiness to real-world scenarios involving attack response, base defense, fast-moving threats, and recovery operations following an attack or simulated hostile incidents. This includes alarms, sirens, and voice notifications to simulate threats like an attack on the base or installation emergencies. It is not a specific real-world threat, no ties to any current geopolitical event like Iran, despite some online speculation. The exercise uses the base's giant voice system, outdoor sirens, clear voice announcements to mimic emergency alerts in a controlled, simulated environment. Well, they made everybody else a part of the environment. That's the crazy part, because everybody else could hear it. Okay. This helps train personnel on deployment operations under pressure and quick reaction standard for military readiness drills. Key confirmations from sources: Air Force Reserve spokespeople, um, Base Public Affairs, Cobb County Management Agency. No real emergency was occurring. Okay, so what do people need to do to be prepared? Since this was just a test, no public action was required for general preparedness. Living near a military base or in Georgia, where threats can include severe weather, man-made incidents, or other emergencies, focus on these steps. Sign up for alerts, right? But here's the thing. In any of these scenarios, what people don't realize is the first thing that goes out is the electricity. It's going to go out. You're not going to have it. So you definitely need to have something that's solar based or battery operated, so that you can still get some type of communication. But a lot of communications are going to be gone. So even your internet might be gone. So this might be a good time to consider satellite phones. It's called a bibby. You can attach it to your phone, or you can get actually you can get Starlink on your phone. I'm just saying, when you're dealing with stuff like this, I've been through the Northridge earthquake, and everybody, they always say, "Oh yeah, the sirens were gone." Okay, because in the middle of the night, the earth kind of shifted and opened, and everything was off. We had no electricity for 72 hours. And 72 hours doesn't sound like a long time, but when you don't have electricity, it's a long time. When people, they're trying to keep people from vandalizing and raiding stores and different things like that, 72 hours, it feels like forever. Because guess what else runs on electricity? Water, gas. There's a lot of things that run on the electrical line. So, some of this preparedness stuff, I'm just like, it sounds great if you've never been through an emergency. Batteries, satellite, those two things. Know the real warning signs, giant voice sirens. Real emergencies use multiple channels, wireless emergency phone notifications, NOAA weather weather report, radio, local TV and radio. But again, if the electricity is off, you're not going to get any of that stuff. You're not. So prepare to not have electricity, and be prepared to, know how to use AM, FM radios, and know how to use satellite. Build basic emergency readiness, 72-hour kit, 1 gallon of water per person per day, non-perishable foods, medication, flashlight, batteries, first aid kit, cash, important documents, and pet supplies if you have pets. Shelter plan, know safe spots at home. Evacuation routes, familiarize yourself with routes away from the base or flood-prone areas in Henry County, Stockbridge. Family communication plan, designated area out of contact, how to reunite is separated, stay informed. Again, none of this stuff is working. In a real world scenario, none of this is working. Okay. So I do appreciate grok, but I find it, slightly comical, because a lot of times in those type of scenarios, not working. And good morning, sassy lady. Thank you so much for joining us. She says, good morning, founder. Good morning to you too. She goes, I know full well about 285. Yeah, it's no joke. And good morning, Cajun lady with her red, white, and blue hearts. Thank you so much for joining us. But again, if you are in any type of emergency situation, yes, you need to have food, you need to have water, but understand your communications. If you are thinking about relying on anything electrical, don't. Plan on the electricity not working. So all of these wonderful emergency alerts they're telling you about probably won't work. Again, just be prepared for that. Be prepared for non-electrical, emergency. If the electricity is still on, that's a blessing. I'm just saying, because otherwise, not going to be a thing. Not going to be a thing. But I definitely wanted to share that with you guys, because, that is concerning, especially with what's going on in Iran. Are we at risk here in our homeland? I would say, yeah. 9/11 did happen. There are people running around shooting. They had the situation in Austin, Texas. They had the other one. What was that? In was it Michigan and Virginia last week? Those two shootings. So yeah, there are threats here on the soil. So we are not above our borders being breached in that way. Be prepared so you don't have to get prepared, right? Be ready and stay ready. And so with that, I wanted to get to something a little happy. Apparently Afro Man has they got a verdict, and they got a good verdict.
County Courthouse, the sound of victory. After jury sided with the musician Afro Man, whose real name is Joseph Foreman, after a days-long civil defamation trial. Afro Man speaking to WCPO right after the verdict.
I didn't win. America won. America still has freedom of speech. It's still for the people, by the people.
The jury finds in favor of the defendant.
7 Adams County Sheriff's deputies sued the musician. They argued Afro Man used security video from a 2022 raid of his home and put it in music videos using deputies' likeness without permission.
There's damage to reputation, there's pain and suffering, there's public humiliation. There's everything you saw and heard from these detectives from the witness stand.
This raid taking place nearly 4 years ago following search warrants related to possession and trafficking in drugs and kidnapping. The rapper was never charged. Along with using the surveillance video in multiple music videos, including in the song Lemon Pound Cake, the deputies also say Afro Man called them thieves and pedophiles, among other things, on social media.
I didn't go down here and sue the police department. I fixed up the damages they made, and I sung songs about them to raise money to do it. They were unapologetic.
The deputies wanted Afro Man to pay $3.9 million in damages.
We got about a total of 250 pieces given out. This is the last one, and I'd like to give it to you.
Supporters of Afro Man coming from near and far with a message both verbally and symbolically.
For me, this isn't really about Afro Man. It's about free speech. So when someone like Afro Man stands up for my free speech by using his talents, his musical talents, to fight the corrupt system, we got to come out and support him.
I'm glad things went my way, but if they would have took it off from me, I was happy about all the love I was getting from everybody. After them people kicked my door in.
In Adams County,
When life give you lemons, you make lemon pound cake.
Jay Shakur, WCPO 9 News.
Yeah. And if you're wondering who Afro Man is, there was a song called And Then I Got High. That's Afro Man. So that's who that is. But good for him. I'm glad that he was able to exploit what happened and he was able to turn it around. And that's why he's like, some people say when you have lemons, you make lemonade. And he made lemon pound cake. So congratulations to him. And I'm glad that free speech is still free, right? And we're going to cover more about, what's happening with our free speech in America. I did cover a little bit of that yesterday. My goodness. There's always some kind of war we got to fight, right? So with that, let's move on to learning a little bit more about what's happening with the SAVE Act. Now, everybody understand we're still in a partial government shutdown. It is still ridiculous. I think it's got to be 5 weeks now. I guess there's this whole big soccer tournament that's coming. People are calling out sick. Congress, get it together. Because here's the deal. Not about the soccer game, but about safety. You guys already said this is about our safety. This is about protecting us. Obviously, it's not important to you. It's not important to anybody. Because I guess, you have your security. But what about the rest of us? Again, there needs to be a referendum. 2026. Don't you dare vote any of these people back in. You vote against them. All of them. No one's seat should be safe. House, Senate, state, local, county, nobody. No incumbents get to go back. Nobody who's been an incumbent gets their seat back. We flip everybody. And I'm serious.
The Save America Act to the floor, and we'll be having a full and robust debate. So, Mr. President, what is the Save America Act? At the core of the Save America Act is the requirement that individuals provide proof of citizenship to register to vote and then show an ID when they go to the polls. In other words, it would require Americans to demonstrate that they're eligible to vote and that they are who they say they are.
All of us should be aware of the fact of what is required by this act when it comes to registering to vote. You have to present identification, correct? But your driver's license, which most people use in the course of business every single day, is not acceptable. What is acceptable is a passport. 50% of Americans do not have a passport. Those who want to obtain it so they can vote will pay $186 and wait 3 or 4 weeks for that to happen. Secondly, you can use a birth certificate. But any person who has changed their name as a result of a marriage or a hyphenated relationship has to find not only their birth certificate, but some correction of it to prove that they're eligible to register to vote.
Guess what? Newsflash. I'm a woman and I had to do that. And yes, I have all the proper documentation. And guess what else, Mr. Durbin? It's in a database. So people can actually find me and look me up. So yes, you need your birth certificate. If you're a woman who has changed her name, make sure you bring your social security card because it also has your name on it and your current driver's license. Yeah, it's not that difficult. Sorry.
I'm happy to report to my dear friend and colleague, Senator Durbin from Illinois, you're in luck. We've taken care of that. When you read the bill, what you'll discover is that we've made special accommodation for those who don't have documentation, or those who can't find their birth certificate, maybe their house burned down, maybe their dog ate it, whatever it is. When all else fails, if you don't have documentation establishing the information on your birth certificate or what would be in a passport or otherwise, The bill contains a provision requiring each state to allow an alternative mechanism by which someone can, by attestation, issue a sworn statement establishing the critical facts underlying their citizenship. It then puts the onus on the state to follow up on that and to determine the authenticity of it. States have access to their own records. States have reciprocity with other states and are able to achieve verification of that. So we've taken care of that problem, and so I'm sure you'll be elated to hear that, and we look forward to having your affirmative vote when we vote on it.
And see, I don't like that. I don't like anything being left up to the states, because these states are awful. They are horrible, and they have allowed illegals to vote in our elections. So here's another caveat that should go on to that. Anyone who does not properly verify and they allow somebody to vote who is not a citizen of this country, they go to prison. It's on them, that individual. Yeah, you get to go to prison, because there needs to be some consequences attached to this. Because see, people know they can do this with impunity. Right now, there's like 19 states that don't want to turn over their information to the federal government, even though everybody needs to reapply. The states are like, you can't have that information. That's personal information. They have their information anyway. Duh. Where do you think the Social Security Administration resides at? In the federal government. It's a federal agency. What are we talking about? We've decided we're just going to put the onus on the states. No, we don't put the onus on the states anymore. The onus is on the individual. And if you cannot come up with your documentation, oh well. If your stuff got burned, guess what? You can apply and have it mailed to your new address. I do not want any more excuses. And I do not want this relying upon the state. That needs to be stricken, because that's just another loophole that they can do to make sure that illegals are in our elections. Sorry.
The Save America Act. We took great pains to go out of our way to make sure that no American would be left in the dark.
Well,
this will not cost them a dime, and no one will be excluded if they can't find their documentation.
According to this new poll, 77% of Americans think that proof of citizenship should be required to vote. That's a big number, 77%. Meanwhile, some Republicans in Congress, you've got many of them, Brandon Gill of Texas is just one example, threatening to oppose all Senate-passed legislation until the upper chamber advances the Save America Act. Talk to me about this. I mean, you do a lot of the groundwork. You go into these states. What's your take on all of this?
Well, thank you for having me back. In 2024, the American people duly elected a completely majority Republican government. And here we are nearly 1.5 years in, and the American people demand and expect results. I want to make it clear, Speaker Mike Johnson and the Republican House are doing its job. They are passing bill after bill after bill, including 3 times the SAVE Act/Save America Act. And so now it's being stalled in the Senate. The House wants it. The president is advocating for it. And I want to give a shout out because you just mentioned Brandon Gill. He said he's a no on any Senate legislation until the Save America Act is passed. Anna Polina Luna is playing hardball, saying she won't even vote for FISA unless the Save America Act is attached to it. Right. Derek Van Orden, Brandy Fine out of Florida. All of these Republican House members are making it clear if the Senate is not going to do its job, then any Senate legislation is not going to move forward in the House. And I think that is the pathway forward.
Yeah, and you work for the Republicans and trying to get people registered to vote. How much do you think that this, if this were to pass, how much do you think that this would help elections in general?
This is not a red nor blue issue. Look at what just happened in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We had an illegal alien by the name of Mahadi Sacco registered since 2005, an illegal alien, and he's voted in the last 5 presidential elections. That means that his illegal alien vote diluted another American citizen's vote. We're seeing illegal alien voting in Arizona. We're seeing illegal alien voting in Michigan. I want to make that evident. This is not Republican. This is not Democrat. This is about fairness, inequality, and any fraudulent vote discounts a legal, lawful American vote. As you mentioned, this has national popularity across all demographics. It's time the Senate get its act together, and I welcome Senate Majority Leader Thune bringing the Save America Act to the Senate floor for debate.
Yeah. But the question is, will they get it passed? That's the question. Because this is getting annoying. So Cajun Lady says they can always get a copy of their birth certificate from the Crown, right? And Uncle Coolwater says, good morning. But do you know who has passports? Majority of immigrants. Yeah, they a lot of times immigrants already have passports because that's how they got over here. But you know, I'm not saying that people haven't had fires to their house or lost their documentation or whatever, what have you. Look, I've said it. They should give a one-time voucher to people who do not have a passport but are citizens here, not naturalized people, but citizens of the United States, and give them a voucher so they can get a passport. One time. And then it will be on you to make sure you keep it renewed and keep it going. But with all the money that we're spending everywhere, I think that's a good idea, and that's a good use of our tax dollars. And Uncle Coolwater says, are they really trying to get rid of people using driver's licenses and a state ID? I think they're trying to get everybody on the real ID. Yeah. And Juggernaut says 100. And he says that's why Biden's admins wanted the borders open. Yeah. I mean, the sad part about this whole thing with the SAVE Act is we already have something like this in place. We do. We already have something in place for our votes. And people that are here that are even naturalized people or people that are here illegally, they are not allowed to vote. Now, people that are naturalized and they actually become U.S. citizens, right? Denouncing their country, becoming U.S. citizens here, yes, they are allowed to vote, but they still have a window of time between their naturalization and when they can actually vote in any elections, whether that's city, county, state, or federal. So there's still parameters around people that are naturalized. You cannot just come over here and be a student under a visa and vote in our elections. That's never supposed to happen because they're not citizens of this country. They're just here temporarily. And all of these people under TPS, they're not supposed to be able to vote at all. They're not. That's not how this works. But now we've got the SAVE Act, right? Trying to kind of, dismantle a lot of those loopholes so people are doing the right thing. But I just don't like anything saying, well, if you don't have your documentation and you show up, it's on the state. That's how we got here. Okay? That's how we have the motor voter situation when people are allowed to have a driver's license and they're not here legally. It's up to them to be a good person and say whether they're a citizen or not. Now, they're just taking a gamble if they say they are a citizen, right? So they can get bits. But there's no double checking happening at the Department of Motor Vehicles. And the Department of Motor Vehicles is like, well, we don't have that kind of capacity to check it. Yes, you do. You do have access to the database. You do. But you're lazy and you're not doing it. And I'm going to say it again. You're lazy and you're not doing it. You're paid to do your job. Stop being lazy, get somebody to do it, and then start deporting people that are lying on these applications. Period. You lied on a document. Yes, it's a state government document. It's not a federal document, but you're making a federal lie because naturalization is at the federal level, not at the state level. States just don't get to make up immigration laws. okay, willy-nilly. They don't. Everybody has a constitution, every single state, all 50 states, and it all remains the same. The only body that has the ability to change immigration laws is our House and Senate. That's it, not the states. But they keep using policy and they keep circumventing the law, and nobody's getting arrested and nobody's being called on it. That's our problem. Huge problem. So whoever that Mr. Lee was, thank you for completely diluting the act and getting it back to a place where it's dumb. If you don't have your documentation, obviously it's not important for you to vote. Obviously it's just not important to you. I don't care. Yes, your house burned down, and guess what? You can put in an order for another birth certificate. Stop that. Stop it. Stop making excuses. I'm tired of these 6 place ribbons. Okay. Obviously, you can tell I'm a Ricky Bobby person. If you're not first, you're last. Okay? That's where I'm at. Get your stuff together. Go and do it right. And if you don't have your documentation, you don't get to vote. Period. That's on you. Go through the hard work and make sure it's right. That's it. That's it. That's it. We need to stop accommodating nonsense. Okay. I'm off my soapbox now. But as you guys can see, I'm passionate about it. Okay. So this next video, I meant to play Tuesday. I didn't get a chance to. But this is a video talking a little bit about Hollywood, again, from a director's perspective. Just some of the things that he saw. And I think it's very, very interesting and very telling of where we're at right now.
These revelations of the elites at a very high level, and we actually know the basic number of them as well, are doing human trafficking, human rape, and human sacrificing of children because they're the closest to God. And when I read this, I mean, it's unthinkable. You don't want to believe it. And so I mentioned it on Joe Rogan, but I also mentioned that I was starting an AI company. And what shocked me is after the show, more people wanted to talk about the AI thing, and more people were upset about, that I was starting an AI company than they were about, this nightmare of elites eating babies.
It's the first time since 2012 that there are no British actors nominated for Best Actor or Best Actress. Yeah, British spokesperson said, yeah, well, at least we arrest our pedophiles. So we got that going for us.
And so then I started thinking about why is this happening? I mean, we've seen people who have spoken about it, who have been who have participated in it and who have left. It's a kind of it's an initiation that you go through to become a confidence initiation that you go through to become part of a team. And that's when I realized that this is not something that's unique to the elites, that human nature involves these kinds of hazing initiations, or else we wouldn't see it happening since childhood.
Andrew Breitbart, I'm quoting you, in a newspaper interview he gave last year discussing the people who run Hollywood. Quote, yes, quote, I'm telling you they're uninteresting, they're vicious, they're vitriolic, they're really, really not good people, and I'm willing to say that on the record, close quote. Is there any of that you regret?
No.
What makes them really, really not good people?
Well, I'm not saying the entirety, but the ones who have controlled Hollywood for the last 40 years, that quote could be attributed to the campus left as well. It could be attributed to people who are in charge in Venezuela right now. Anywhere where the left gets control, you start to see political correctness run amok. You start seeing dissenting views quashed. they use projection. Right before they do so, they start attacking the people that are.
And it's a form of also of predictive programming. And
you started to get into that on the show, but then I do it too. He cut you off on another subject. Elaborate, because I've studied the Graham Grimoires, black magic, all that stuff to understand these people. They talk about you have to show them, you have to tell them. That's metaphysical rule. It also gets them ready, and then it makes it even more powerful when you actually do it, and then you realize that they're doing this. Speak to that if you can.
Well, we live in a universe of mind, and the one thing I've started to realize is that these kind of forms of spells, this magic is real. When you believe something enough, you create a reality.
Yeah, we call it a spell. What it is a narrative to control your mind, and we can build incredible things. So it's a program.
It is a program. You select it. You project it, you expect it, and then you collect it. It's the spec method, and it actually works. And so people who are using it for, there's good spells and bad spells, and there's spells that are promoting humanity, and then there's spells that are disintegrating humanity. When people are, doing sacrifice, whether it's human sacrifice or animal sacrifice, the reason they're doing it is because it works.
I reckon a lot of I've been on.
Yeah. So just understand a lot of the things that we see and watch, that we intake. As human beings, we are very powerful, right? A lot of the things that we see around us that have been built, came about from intelligence, but somebody saw it and then carried it out. We saw it and they carried it out. Movies have been used to tell us what can be, and for some movies, we actually saw ahead of time. It's like, well, that could happen. That might happen. I look at Back to the Future, and we haven't seen the physical hoverboards, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist, right? They're just not in wide circulation. But magnetic energy, opposing magnetic energies, can cause a hovering type, scenario. It's been proven. Magnets in opposition, but running in a parallel way. So those things do exist. But again, because they're not in wide circulation, we think, okay, that's far reaching from us. Some things are within our reach, some things are not. But we really have to pay attention to what we intake, because the things we intake, we do project, right? So let's keep it going. The next video I wanted to get into was something I wanted to, again, a lot of these things I was like, I wanted to play this. I wanted to get into this. Before I get into our next video, I wanted to get into some trending topics on X. Let's get into that really quick. All right. So airport chaos grows as the DHS shutdown hits 34 days. Can you believe it's been 34 days? So 34 days. It's crazy. And in between that time, we're in this conflict with Iran. It's not a war. Calm down. So a partial government shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security has entered its 34th day, causing nearly 10% of TSA officers, about 2,700, to call out sick on March 18th. That was yesterday. This led to long lines and checkpoint closures at airports like Atlanta and Houston during spring break travel. Republicans, push full funding bills with immigration reforms, while Democrats seek separate funding for TSA and other agencies, blocking each other's short-term fixes. So there's over 100,000 DHS workers have gone unpaid, and more than 300 TSA officers have resigned since mid-February. And airlines warn of worsening disruptions, because what we also forget, air traffic controllers, like a lot of these people aren't getting paid. They're door dashing and doing other things. This is crazy. This is insane. All right, and the next one, a man in tactical gear enters Texas elementary school. He's released on bond. What? So Kyle Nahim Chris, a 39-year-old Iraq-born. How can you be an Iraq-born U.S. citizen? Huh? Entered Zwink Elementary School in Spring, Texas on March 10th after a visitor left the door unlatched. Dressed in a military-style clothing with a holstered handgun and taser, he had no ID or school ties but couldn't reach classrooms and left after staff questioned him. Arrested that evening, he faces a felony charge for unlawful weapon carry and was released on March 15th on $75,000 bond with house arrest and an ankle monitor. The district is boosting security after multiple gun incidents that week. This is not about guns. This is about the lack of people doing their jobs. Now, I just showed you that video, right? And how the gentleman was saying, yeah, politically, a lot of people come in to areas and they start accusing each other and they start to weaken and break down laws. What have we seen in the past few years? The laws have been broken down. And it says, should the judges who allowed be removed, right? Here's a list of judges that have been releasing people back out. So DeCarlos Brown, he had 17 arrests and he killed this person. He unalived this person. David Mazarigos, he was arrested 33 times and he unalived this person. Alexander Dickey, arrested 39 times and unalived this person. Timothy Bowler, arrested 45 times and unalived that person. Lawrence Reed, it just keeps going. It keeps going. 72 arrests? 72? Huh? Like, how is that even possible? How is it even possible that we have people here on the soil that aren't being arrested, right? Now, with that, I also came across something this morning. Not this one. Let me see. I gotta go back to my bookmark folder. Sometimes everything doesn't get put in my folder. But I came across this. An 18-year-old was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He robbed a convenience store. And I'm not saying he needs to be released, but robbery is something that can be, 2 years in prison? And hopefully he would be rehabilitated, right, during that time so that he doesn't commit more crimes. But you release these other people and it led to other people being unalive, but you want to commit this person to 25 years? That's egregious. Like, that's egregious. Seriously egregious. So let's just hear what this judge has to say. Let me get it a little bit more on the screen. Make it a little bit smaller so we can fit it all.
Mr. Fontenette, there was a time some years ago that there really wasn't even a question. Everyone, state's attorneys were recommending youthful offenders, probation, let's give everybody an opportunity. And things have just changed in such an incredibly dangerous way with young people doing what I just saw you do on that screen.
I cannot imagine the fear.
I cannot imagine the fear
that was working in that store.
Person had that was working in that store. That he now has just trying to go to work.
That person's still alive, by the way. Just want to put that out there.
And go home.
And then go home. And he has three
people come in and
not just grab a little quick something and run out, but terrorize him for
quite some time. pulling him around, yanking him around, putting guns in his face, all three of you. I also, in addition to the PSI, get jail incident reports. And you apparently like to fight and jump people, which is what's been happening in the jail. So it makes it very difficult for me to go, oh, this is somebody that's going to get out and behave, who can follow the rules, because you can't even follow the rules in jail. And the pre-sentence report shows that you're a high risk level, which tells me that after they've looked at everything, that you don't have, unfortunately, a good likelihood of being successful if I were to put you on probation. And Mr. Coleman's right. We're tired of it. And there's got to be something done. So in cause number 25, DCCR 1759, I'm going to find that you entered your plea of guilty freely and voluntarily. I'm going to find sufficient evidence to find you guilty. And at this time, I'm going to find you guilty of aggravated robbery. I'm going to sentence you to a term of 25 years in the institutional division.
25 years. He's 18. That's egregious. 25 years? Are you kidding me? I just read to you WUSA. They just released somebody who walked into a school with tactical gear for $75,000. That person's obviously not a risk. That person obviously, just put an ankle bracelet on them. They'll be fine until they kill somebody. I just showed you the list of individuals released until they unalived people. He's beating up people for a reason. Figure it out. But just throwing people away like this, that's not going to help either, ma'am. Because, see, there is something wrong with the system. 25 years? That's unacceptable. She needs to be removed from the bench. This is
Mr. Fontenot,
that is not about trying to help anybody. All of these people kept being released until these people are no longer with us. That's a problem. We have a problem in this country, and it needs to be solved. So next, let's check out what's happening in Los Angeles, because apparently undercover video reveals alleged election law violations on LA Skid Row. So O'Keefe Media Group footage shows 28 instances of petition circulators offering $2 to $10 payments, smokes or weed to Skid Row residents in exchange for signatures on initiatives like a billionaire tax and a $30 hotel wage measure, plus voter registrations. Staff at the publicly funded Weingart Center directed people to them and coached on avoiding legal trouble. California officials, including Newsom's office and the LADA, pledged investigations into these potential misdemeanors and federal violations, echoing prior probes in the state. They're not going to do anything. They don't care. They don't care. They do not care in California. I'm telling you, California has been on fire for a long, long time, especially since Newsom has gotten into office. It's been gross. He's run California into the ground, and it's not going to get any better. Now, you got to remember, Newsom, he's up north. He's about 10 hours away in San Francisco. So Los Angeles really doesn't affect him much, but Los Angeles is one of the larger counties in California. And it's, like I said, it's down south. But this is what's happening. This is Skid Row in Los Angeles, and they're getting these people money to sign these petitions. I'm not going to play the whole 28 minutes, but I will play a little bit of it.
Now we're going to get you $2. We got need 14 signatures. The petitioner Brenda Brown hands cash money to the homeless person, not only for signing the California ballot initiative, but also as payment for them to register to vote.
Now, because you haven't registered, I need to register you so I can get paid too. I'm paying you guys, I need to get paid.
That is a federal felony. And it didn't just happen once, it happened over and over and over again. We personally witnessed and covertly filmed this happening at least 28 times over the span of our investigation, and that is just in Los Angeles. Many of the homeless have zero understanding of what it is that they're actually signing.
But what is that petition for? You know the petition?
The petitioners instruct the homeless to enter made-up addresses like Pinocchio Lane.
Oh, good.
And all of this occurring just outside the front doors of shelters and NGOs such as Weingart Center, which have received hundreds of millions of dollars in government money. One Weingart employee tells us when and where to find the illegal cash exchanges for signatures outside, and says the cash being given out is coming from a higher source.
Do you know if they provide the money that they're handing out?
Yeah, that's what they do. When they give the money out, they got to go back and tally up if they stealing the money or not, so they got to have receipts. Most of them be right across the street under that tree. You can check with them Monday through Friday.
While another Weingart employee advises the homeless on how to practice plausible deniability and ignorance of the law.
See, they say ignorance is not excuse for the law. But a lot of times I have to say I didn't know. I had no idea. Oh, that would be what he should say.
Yeah. The petitioners orchestrate an elaborate peer.
Yeah. Homelessness has become a business for some of these NGOs, and they all need to be investigated, audited. Where's the compliance for our tax dollars? Like, I'm a compliance specialist, so stuff like this just drives me nuts. Like, I don't like it at all. Like, I'm a little bit of a control freak. I'm just sorry. I'm just saying. I'm being honest. Okay. But I need to know where things are going and why they're working or they're not working, because that woman who said, oh, just say I don't know, she needs to go to jail. All of these other people need to go to prison too. But then again, what is that going to solve? This is a problem. This is an epidemic in our country, because it's not only going on here. I'm sure it's going on in other places as well. What about New York? Places with a high population of homelessness. I mean, what's really going on? It's really, really sad. It's really, really, really sad. And Cajun Lady says the homeless crisis will never be fixed because it's a booming business. It is. It is keeping these NGOs, what they call it, the non-profit industrial complex or something like that. Yeah, the NGO complex. Now, yeah, it is really disgusting. But you know what? This what would help? Shut off the program. You would have to turn off the dollars going to these NGOs. And you would have to really have some strict guidelines and reformations in the states. And open back up the insane asylums, because we had them and people don't like that name. So we will just say, for those who are mentally unfit to be in the population right now, they've got issues going on. And we need to reopen those institutions and not have people in there that are just going to abuse the patients, because that's a reason why some of them got closed in the first place. We need people there that are really going to care for the patients and start to really get the patients well, so then the patients can take care of the other individuals that are coming in, right? So you create this ecosystem, not of a community that would continue abuse and drugs and all those things. No, you want people to start doing better and give back and doing better. But, it's a long shot with everything what these people are doing. But hey, I just got to bring you the information. And now we're going to get into a video that I meant to play yesterday about Mr. Joe Kent, who left the administration. I played you the video yesterday where Alex Jones kind of read his resignation letter. But I wanted to show you this video where he talked to Tucker Carlson about Iran. Now, this is before the conflict that recently happened in February. So I just wanted you guys to see this.
Last question, because he called it 60 years ago. You referred to what a war with Iran would do to the United States. And I don't know that a lot of people in this country fully understand what Iran is as a nation state. It's not Afghanistan. What do you think the immediate and then longer term effects of a war with Iran would be on the United States?
Immediately, it would be very bloody. I have no doubt that we could probably defeat some of their air defense and go in there and have another shock and awe campaign. But again, like we saw how the shock and awe campaign in Iraq really didn't actually work in the long run. So I have no doubt that we'd have some immediate results that people would cheer about here in the United States. But Iran, Persia has always been an empire. It's been around longer than any of the other players in the modern Middle East right now, and they are not going anywhere. And right now, Iran has a lot of internal problem. They have a lot of internal strife with the Ayatollah and that government that's only been in power since 1979. But again, if we start conducting strikes in Iran, everyone in Iran will rally around their leader and they will become even more revolutionary. And then we will have Iranian proxies throughout the entire region that will be conducting attacks just like we had in Jordan. And really in the long term, Tucker, the axis that has been built really since Putin invaded Russia and we decided that since Putin invaded Ukraine and we decided we were going to throw this massive sanctions package at them, China has come in as a major player and we are deeply compromised by China. They control a lot of our economy. They control global manufacturing. They're deeply embedded in Wall Street. And they've also made deals with the Iranians. They want access to Iranian petro, not to mention the fact that Biden killed off U.S. energy independence and now he's going after LNG. And the world's biggest LNG exporters are Iran, Russia, and Qatar. So this axis would become very powerful. If we get deeply involved and deeply entangled with Iran, we are playing right into China's hands because China would like nothing more than for us to be committing our military industrial base to a war in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, and then to be committing our conventional military power, our blood and our treasure back in the Middle East. That will make the Pacific, our actual border, extremely vulnerable to Chinese aggression, or China will simply just watch us bleed out economically as we bleed out on the battlefield on these couple different theaters. It's absolute insanity. It's opening up Pandora's box. And again, for what gain to the American people?
I mean, I think that's the most reasonable, common sense based, factual assessment I've seen of this from anyone.
Now, that was before the conflict. And in my opinion, I think, well, what are they talking about? They're talking about the Iran conflict and the effects of it. So the gentleman that was speaking, his name is Joe Kent. He is a Gold Star family member. His wife actually passed away, I think, in either Iraq or Afghanistan. He lost his wife in that conflict. They were both in the military. And so what he was talking about is the what ifs, because we weren't in Iran at that time. But if you listen to what he said in that video, a lot of these things have played out. Some have. And now we need to really look at, okay, what are we navigating being in Iran? What benefit is it to America to be there, to be in Ukraine and dealing with Russia, right? And seeing these things play out because, you know, President Trump was saying, he goes, I don't want to be in these endless wars and conflicts. And now we find ourselves here in Iran. Why? Right? I think a lot of American citizens are asking that question specifically. So let's get into our next video. And this is actually going to show some of the conflict that's happening. And I want to say this is Libya. This isn't in Iran. Oh, sorry, Beirut.
New video of an Israeli airstrike taking out a building in Beirut as the IDF takes aim at Hezbollah targets in Lebanon.
The terror group's main sponsor, Iran, is also in the crosshairs of U.S. and Israeli strikes. CENTCOM giving an update moments ago on Operation Epic Fury. Pilots have carried out more than 8,000 flights now, taking out nearly 7,800 enemy targets. That's the update at this hour, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith in New York on a very busy afternoon. John?
Very busy Wednesday afternoon. I'm John Roberts in Washington. This is America Reports. Israel's military says it has killed Iran's intelligence minister in an airstrike, making it the third senior Iranian leader to be eliminated so far this week.
So, John, right now, President Trump is on the way, as you just saw moments ago, to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to attend the dignified transfer of 6 American service members who were killed in the crash of a refueling aircraft over Iraq.
Our chief foreign affairs correspondent, Trey Inks, live in Tel Aviv for us. Trey?
John, good afternoon. I want to start with a statement crossing the wires just last hour from Iran's Supreme Leader Mustafa Khamenei, saying that criminals have to pay soon for his blood. And he is reportedly talking about the top official Ali Larijani, who was killed yesterday. We should note we've not yet seen any proof of life from the new supreme leader in Iran, and this statement is coming through Reuters via state media in Iran. It comes as we're tracking developments out of the Islamic Republic, where overnight the Israelis launched a precision strike to kill Ismail Khatib, Iran's intelligence minister, a man who was responsible in part for taking down the internet in Iran. You can see some file video of him here. He was also responsible for coordinating the sleeper cells of the Iranian regime around the world. He is the third top Iranian official in just 24 hours to be taken out, alongside the besieged commander Soleimani and Ali Larijani. These three were responsible in different ways for the crackdown on protesters earlier this year, and it does appear this is part of a shaping operation to lay the groundwork for Iranian civilians if they decide to take to the streets of their country once again. We're also tracking U.S. strikes, where U.S. Central Command says for the first time in this conflict, they used multiple 5,000-pound deep penetrator bombs on hardened Iranian missile sites near the Strait of Hormuz. This map shows where those strikes took place. And again, they were going after the anti-ship missiles belonging to the Iranian regime that threaten that critical waterway. As these strikes are taking place, U.S. Central Command launching a variety of strikes alongside their Israeli counterparts, going after ballistic missile launching positions, command and control centers, and other locations that the Iranian regime thought they were able to hide from those American and Israeli planes. The Israelis also releasing some new video of their own, showing a wave of strikes against critical Iranian infrastructure, as reports indicate that gas facilities were also targeted in the south of Iran today. This video shows the besieged forces that had set up checkpoints in the Iranian capital of Tehran. They are being, quote, hunted by the Israelis, again, trying to lay the groundwork if civilians there want to go to the streets. Now, John, tonight, the Israeli people are bracing for more incoming Iranian ballistic missile fire. The regime continues to launch cluster munitions at this country, overnight killing at least 2 people. John?
Trey Inks in Tel Aviv kicking us out this afternoon with the latest details. Trey, thank you. Now this.
Be sure to like and subscribe.
I'm just praying for those people in Iran, because it's just, war is never good, but with everything else going on, there's a saying, it says, when all else fails, go to war. You know, people have been talking about the economy's not right, this and that and the other, and here we are, right? We're in a conflict. We are not in a war. Now, Israel, they can say if they're in a war with Iran, that's not our war here in the United States, because we have, you know, kind of checks and balances on our side. I don't like that we're a part of this conflict, but what I am grateful for is Promethean and explaining a lot of what's going on behind the scenes and giving a different perspective, right, of what is happening there in Iran. So I wanted to play this first video, and this talks about Trump and Russia and how they point to the same enemy.
Focused on Iran this week, President Trump made clear that he is operating on a grander theater of war. Here's what the president said. I'm surprised that Zelensky doesn't want to make a deal. Tell Zelensky to make a deal because Putin's willing to make a deal. Zelensky is far more difficult to deal with. The president just told you who is blocking the peace. And this week, Russia's foreign ministry took it a step higher and laid the blame directly on the British. Two great powers pointing in the same direction. That is not a coincidence. That is the sound of the British imperial chessboard being flipped over. So today I'm going to take you out of the fog of the immediate war and all the propaganda around Iran and show you how the strategic map of the entire world is being redrawn in real time by sovereign nations acting in their own interests for the first time in 80 years. Now, the establishment media wants you totally focused on Iran, whether it's the CNN narrative that Trump doesn't have a plan and we're in for chaos, or the Fox narrative that he's out for regime change, or that this is a masterstroke against Russia and China. They want you trapped in their narrative. What they don't want you to see is the big picture. They're reporting from inside the old paradigm. But if you zoom out, you'll see something entirely different. This week, the outlines of a new world order, a real one, not Mark Carney's, began to emerge. Great powers acting in their own sovereign interests, converging against the forces of permanent manufactured conflict. I'm Susan Kokinda. I've tracked the imperial great game for decades, not the puppet show and the headlines, but the real architecture of power. The empire doesn't fight its own wars. It manages them. It needs great powers in permanent conflict because that's what keeps it in control. What we are now seeing is that architecture beginning to fail on every front simultaneously. So if you want to understand how that is unfolding, please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons so we can stay in touch and we can reach more people. Here's what I'm going to cover today. First, Trump's identification of Zelensky as the obstacle to peace, with a side note on Israel. Second, Russia's identification of Britain as the obstacle to peace. And third, what Russia and China didn't do in the UN Security Council and what it means. So let's start with what the president actually told us this week. Because in the same 7 days, Donald Trump drew a line on the record in his own words, separating American objectives from the agendas of two of the empire's most important instruments. And most people missed it because they were watching two different stories instead of one. So on Ukraine, you already heard what he told NBC. Putin is willing to make a deal. Zelensky is the obstacle. But there's a second quote from that same interview that is just as important. When Zelensky offered to help the United States intercept Iranian drones, Trump's response was immediate. Zelensky is the last person we need help from. Let that land. The man whose war the entire transatlantic establishment has demanded America fund, arm, and defend at any cost, Trump just told you he's the last person whose help he wants. Now turn to Iran. In the same week at Joint Base Andrews, a reporter asked the president directly whether American objectives in Iran are the same as Israel's. And here's what the president said.
Are you speaking with Prime Minister Netanyahu? And are your objectives the same in terms of ending the war?
They might be a little different, I guess. You know, they're a different country than we are.
Then Defense Secretary Hegseth said the same thing. When asked about Israel striking Iranian oil facilities, which was not a stated American objective, Hegseth said,
well, I would just state by saying Israel's been a really strong partner in this effort. Where they have different objectives, they've pursued them. Ultimately, we've stayed focused on ours.
So on two different fronts, Ukraine and Iran, the U.S. is pursuing its own objectives. On Ukraine, Trump is saying that Putin is the reasonable party and Zelensky is the obstacle. On Iran, Trump is telling Netanyahu, whose war aims include permanent regime change and an indefinite timeline, that America has different objectives. And President Trump has already acted on that difference, sending Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner to Israel after they bombed an oil refinery to tell Israel to stop hitting domestic economic targets. The U.S. wants a stable Iran with a functioning economy when the fighting is over. These are not mixed messages. This is a president refusing on both fronts to be managed by the empire's pawns. And Russia just gave the empire a name. But before I get to that, if you're finding this kind of analysis, that is the real architecture behind the headlines, useful, then you need to be subscribed to Promethean Action's free newsletter. We've been tracking the imperial great game for decades, and right now, that work has never mattered more. So use the link in the description to sign up for our newsletter. So while President Trump was identifying Zelensky as the obstacle to peace, the Russian Foreign Ministry took it a step higher. On March 10th, British Storm Shadow missiles struck a civilian district of Bryansk in Russia. 7 people killed, dozens were wounded. Russia's foreign ministry did not issue a generic condemnation of Western aggression. They named the British directly. They said, "It is evident that Britain has become deeply entangled in geopolitical games, seeking to strengthen its status as the informal leader of European hawks on the Ukrainian track and as Russia's irreconcilable adversary." And then they accused Britain of sabotaging the American-led peace process. We have also noted that British weapons were used at a time when political and diplomatic efforts to settle the Ukrainian crisis in the trilateral Russia-US-Ukraine format are intensifying. The obvious goal of London and other Western capitals is to stage a large-scale provocation involving civilian casualties in order to derail the peace process and escalate hostilities. Russia is naming Britain by name. Chatham House, the empire's premier foreign policy think tank, came out and bluntly admitted it with the headline, "Europe is helping Ukraine resist a U.S. push for peace at any price." Britain's own brain trust has stated its mission openly: prevent the President of the United States from ending this war. Then look at what Zelensky did in the same week. He threatened the life of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, a sitting EU head of state. Zelensky told a government meeting that he would give Orban's address to Ukrainian soldiers so they could, in his words, call him and speak with him in their own language. This was so outrageous that even the European Union had to denounce Zelensky, stating that the type of language used yesterday by President Zelensky is not acceptable. There must be no threats against EU member states. And even Orban's main political opponent in Hungary, who is running against him in next month's elections, demanded that Zelensky apologize to all Hungarian citizens. Think about what you just witnessed. The empire's primary instrument in Europe, the leader it spent 3 years portraying as a heroic defender of Western democracy, threatening to have a NATO ally's head of government killed, and the empire's own European Union institutions had to publicly repudiate him. Britain is now named as the opponent of peace. Zelensky is increasingly isolated even within his own alliance. Now put that in context of what happened at the UN. On March 11th, the United Nations Security Council voted on a resolution brought by the Gulf states and others, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Jordan, condemning Iran's missile and drone attacks on their territories. 135 nations co-sponsored it. The resolution passed 13-0, which means that Russia abstained and China abstained. Neither used their veto. Now, the mainstream media barely reported this, but I want you to understand what it actually means, because you won't understand it if you're in the old geopolitical world that gives you headlines that portray Russia and China as locked into their support for Iran, as this one on Fox does, or as the Ukrainian press continues to try and portray Iran, Russia, and China as the new axis of evil. But every rule of the old Cold War playbook, the binary the empire has relied on for 80 years, by those rules, Russia and China should have vetoed this resolution. That's what the script called for: protect your partner, block the Western initiative, keep the great powers in their assigned corners. But they didn't. This is a new strategic reality, one in which nations are taking themselves off the British geopolitical chessboard. And if you're paying attention to what President Trump said on March 13th, you'll actually see it in action. He was asked if Russia was helping Iran.
You think Putin is helping them?
I think he might be helping them a little bit, yeah, I guess. And he probably thinks we're helping Ukraine, right?
And you are, right?
Yeah, we're helping them also. And so he says that. And China would say the same thing. You know, it's like, hey, they do it and we do it, in all fairness. They do it and we do it.
Think about that. The President of the United States just placed America, Russia, and China on the same plane of sovereign nations acting in their own interests. not enemies locked in permanent ideological combat. Countries that do what they do in their own interests and deal with each other on that basis. And he didn't just say it, he acted on it. The United States has announced a temporary lifting of sanctions on Russian oil stranded at sea in order to stabilize the energy markets roiled by the Iran war. And when he was asked about China, Iran's largest trading partner, Trump didn't threaten Beijing. He said the United States' efforts to keep the Strait of Hormuz open was in China's interest too. That is the sovereign realism at the heart of the administration's national security strategy and national defense strategy. Both of those new doctrines explicitly reject the post-war paradigm of permanent great power conflict. Now, connect this to everything we've covered today. Trump telling NBC that Putin wants peace and Zelensky is the obstacle. Trump telling the press that American objectives in Iran are different from Israel's. Russia naming Britain as the saboteur of the peace channel, and Russia and China declining to shield Iran's destabilizing behavior against sovereign Arab nations. What you're looking at is the same thing. Great powers, the United States, Russia, China, beginning to act on converging sovereign interests rather than playing their assigned roles in someone else's great game. This is the new strategic map being redrawn. And the empire, whose entire system depends on keeping great powers in permanent conflict, has no moves left that don't accelerate its own exposure. Now, Promethean Action is doing more than just exposing. We're building a movement that can defeat this. And understanding and backing Trump's strategic and economic revolution is a critical part of that. So if you want to be part of that fight, join us at Promethean Action as a supporting member or a contributor. This has been your Monday Brief. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment.
Yes. So that was from the 16th. So it was about, 3 days ago. So now I've got another video from Promethean that was actually just dropped a few hours ago. And this is about NATO. Okay. So she was already discussing the United Nations and everything that's happening. But again, I really like how she is explaining the narrative. And you can be a part of, I suggest, I want to say like the lockstep narrative. They want you to be a part of, like, we have these great enemies and this and that going on. And it's like sometimes you kind of have to listen and see what else is happening in other places to put it all together, because at the end of the day, God does not deal in confusion. He doesn't. Anything that God does, it's pretty smooth. Like human beings, we're not perfect. We're always dealing in confusion. We're completely chaotic and off the rails. But God doesn't deal in confusion. God is very direct and straightforward. And it is up to us to make sure that we're not deceived. That's up to us, each individual. So we have to be responsible.
Trump did at the State of the Union. He walked Democrats right into a trap, and they didn't even see it coming until it was too late.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
Now he's doing the same thing with the modern British financial empire and their enforcement arm, namely NATO.
But I was surprised to see that NATO, while they agree that it was a very important thing to do, they agree fully. Nobody said, oh, you shouldn't do it. I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake. And I've long said that, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test, because we don't need them, but they should have been there.
Notice how he calls this a great test. He followed up on Truth Social, concluding he wasn't surprised by NATO's refusal to defend ships in the Strait of Hormuz, since we spent billions defending them with absolutely no return to us. The media is telling you that Trump is throwing a tantrum because our European allies won't help protect the strait, that he's mad about oil prices. They're all wrong. President Trump has been preparing to leave NATO for months. The allies' refusal to back him on Iran didn't cause his break with NATO. It confirmed his idea about their stupid games. I'm Barbara Boyd. I've spent decades tracking the British financial empire's imperial wars in the Middle East and NATO's role as their enforcement arm across all of Eurasia. Today, I'm going to first cover Trump dumping NATO, a huge story. Then how Iran illustrates the battle between Trump's American system economics and the British free trade looters. And finally, how the globalists are trying to split MAGA through their oldest weapon, religious warfare. But first, please like and share this video. It increases our reach on YouTube. The end of NATO didn't begin last week. It began in February 2025 at the Munich Security Conference, the premier annual gathering of the NATO alliance. Vice President J.D. Vance walked into that room and told Europe's assembled leadership that Europe wasn't being threatened from without, it was being destroyed from within by totalitarian censorship, thought crime prosecutions, open borders, and election rigging.
We also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense. The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
The room was astounded, but Vance wasn't wrong, and the Trump administration was serving notice on NATO. Here's where Iran enters this picture. Under Biden, the Europeans, France, Germany, and the UK had taken the lead on the Iran nuclear file under Biden's Iran envoy, Robert Mueller. Now, Mueller came under investigation for mishandling classified documents and suspected recruitment by Iranian intelligence. So those talks went nowhere while Iran built its arsenal. In March 2025, Donald Trump wrote to Ayatollah Khamenei seeking renewed nuclear negotiations with a 60-day deadline. When that deadline expired, he launched Operation Midnight Hammer, bombing Iran's nuclear facilities. After initial waffling, the UK, Germany, and France finally fell in line, supporting the strike and initiating sweeping sanctions against Iran. But in their own backyard, the Europeans were playing a double game, doing everything in their power to sabotage Trump's settlement of the Russia-Ukraine war, a war killing thousands every week. And now, their abject refusal to defend oil and gas shipments through the Gulf, including gas due for their own countries, has solved the testing the president has been doing of them. They have failed. They have shown their true faces. Here's President Trump yesterday on leaving NATO.
Disappointed in NATO that we spend trillions of dollars on NATO. Think of it, trillions over the years, many trillions of dollars. It's one of the reasons we have deficits and we help other countries. And when they don't help us, I mean, it's certainly something that we should think about. I don't need Congress for that decision, as you probably know. I can make that decision myself. I'd work with some very smart people. And I'd always deal with Congress anyway, but I don't need Congress for that decision. But, you know, when you say rethink, I have nothing currently in mind, but I will say that I'm not exactly thrilled when we help them with Ukraine.
Trump is seriously thinking about dumping the Praetorian Guard of the globalist financial empire, and he doesn't need Congress to do it. He's clearly thought about it. The media won't cover that astounding and revolutionary statement. But that's our mission here at Promethean Action, to mine for you the events which matter. Subscribe to our free newsletter, and you'll be in the president's mental space, not that of our nation's enemies. To understand what Trump is actually doing, you have to read what his administration has actually written. The national security strategy came out in December. The defense strategy followed in January. Both delivered huge bad news for the post-war globalist financial order. He wants out of Europe. He's prioritizing the Western Hemisphere, our own country, and trade with the Pacific. Here's what the national security strategy says explicitly about the Middle East. As this administration rescinds or eases restrictive energy policies and American energy production wraps up, America's historical reason for focusing on the Middle East will recede. Instead, the region will increasingly become a source of destination of international investment in industries well beyond oil and gas, including nuclear energy, AI, and defense technologies. Read that again. The intent is to get out of the Middle East militarily and open a new chapter of American-led economic development. And it's not just words. The Gulf states have already committed $17 trillion in investments into the American economy. So why bomb Iran? Because Iran's constant proxy warfare creates perpetual regional instability. And that instability keeps oil prices volatile and high. That volatility is a direct threat to Trump's economic revolution at home. That revolution is built on one major foundation: cheap, reliable energy. Drill, baby, drill isn't a slogan. It's the load-bearing wall of everything Trump is building for the American working class. And it's not just Iran standing in the way. Oil prices are not set in Riyadh or Houston. They're set through London's spot and commodity markets. And those markets profit from exactly the instability Iran provides. The major oil companies have told Trump repeatedly they're not interested in drill, baby, drill. Excess supply drives down prices and endangers their preference for shareholder value, share buybacks. They would rather manage scarcity than flood the market with cheap American energy. And then there's the ideological layer in Europe. The UK, Canada, and Europe remain committed to the green religion, willing to punish their own citizens with crushing energy prices in service of that ideology. Cheap American energy isn't just an economic competitor to them, it's a theological threat. So when you see NATO allies refusing to back Trump on Iran, this isn't a diplomatic spat among friends. This is the enforcement arm of the British financial empire fighting for its own survival. While all this plays out on the world stage, the globalists are running a very old play right here at home. I lived through 1968. The assassinations of Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King didn't just grieve the country, it traumatized it. They broke millions of people's willingness to fight, to believe political action could change anything. What followed was the counterculture. Remember that? Turn on, tune in, drop out. Not a whole lot of people stayed in the fight. I watched a similar but different dynamic unfold in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination on September 10th, 2025, just 6 months ago. In that traumatized, suggestible atmosphere, two separate internet warfare operations ignited, and I don't believe either is coincidental. The first told MAGA that Trump is controlled by Netanyahu, by an all-powerful Israeli lobby, by a foreign power. The implication? Your movement has been betrayed. Never mind that Trump has been calling for military action against Iran since 2011 and earlier, before he was even a candidate. The second ran the opposite current, that the administration is riddled with secret Israel haters, Muslim sympathizers, anti-war saboteurs. Two currents, opposite directions. Same result. Fraction of the coalition that delivered Trump's overwhelming November victory ahead of the midterms. MAGA in 2024 was an interfaith movement. The Muslim vote in Michigan was decisive. Arab Americans, Hindu Americans, evangelical Christians, Jews, traditional Catholics, all under one banner. Religious warfare has been the global empire's weapon of choice for permanent war in the Middle East for decades. And they're very good at it, and they're doing it here now. In addition to the president, their primary targets are Vice President Vance and DNI Tulsi Gabbard, both of whom built political careers on opposition to regime change wars. Both are essential right now for their missions aimed at dismantling the deep state. Here's Vance at the fraud task force signing ceremony when a reporter tried to drive exactly that wedge between him and the president that we're talking about.
I know what you're trying to do, Phil. You're trying to drive a wedge between members of the administration, between me and the president. What the president said consistently, going back to 2015, and I agreed with him, is that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon.
And Tulsi, Yesterday, one of her top deputies, Joe Kent, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, resigned, claiming Iran posed no imminent threat and the war was started due to Israeli lobby pressure. That statement is word for word the globalist psychological warfare narrative. It came from inside the building. Here's Gabbard's response. Donald Trump was overwhelmingly elected by the American people to be our president and commander-in-chief. After carefully reviewing all the information before him, President Trump concluded that the terrorist Islamist regime in Iran posed an imminent threat, and he took action based on that conclusion. Neither one of them took the bait, and the polling shows MAGA supports the war. The president's base gets it. But you can't deliver the victory that we need in the midterms if it's just the MAGA base. This side war is aimed at all the low propensity voters, so-called, the voters who turned out in record numbers for Trump in November. That's who the PSYOP is seeking to demoralize, along with the first-time Trump voters who were Democrats and the independents. We're going to put some effort into neutralizing it right now, this operation. But it starts with you, our listeners. You know the people on each side of this on the internet. Tell everyone you know who supported the president in 2024 not to fall for the oldest globalist trick. Also, if you haven't already, please become a paying member of Promethean Action or donate.
And I do like the perspective that you brought forth, right? You have to look outside of what everybody is saying to get a different perspective. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you put it in terms of what people will do to dismantle a movement, right? Now, I know I did say, MAGA can become a cult if people are not paying attention, right? Because yes, there is a core base that understand why they are there, but what about everybody else, right? What are the real guardrails so people do not start building a monument and it continues to be a movement to actually do right by American citizens, if that is what Make America Great Again stands for, right? Because again, if it's based in ideology, it will get infiltrated and fall apart. Now, the next part that I wanted to briefly go over, I'm not going to get into a long run of it, but I noticed in one of the videos yesterday, they said that Britain was involved with the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is the feedback I got from Grok. Britain's involvement with the Muslim Brotherhood was primarily pragmatic and opportunistic during the late colonial period in Egypt, shifting from suppression to covert financing and collaboration in the 1940s and 50s. This was driven by Britain's need to conquer secular nationalists, communists, and later Gamal Abdel Nasser, rather than ideological alignment. The MB was not founded or created by Britain. It emerged independently in 1928 as Islamiyah Egypt under Hassan al-Banna as an explicitly anti-colonial Islamist movement opposing British occupation and Western influence. So the Muslim Brotherhood is used by Britain when it's beneficial, right? It's a tool, in my opinion. That's what it really comes down to. And it talks about, the early periods, the shift to collaboration and financing. By 1940, Britain's strategy changed amid wartime pressures. The pro-British Egyptian monarchy began funding the MB to undermine secular nationalists like the WAFD party and communists. British officials saw tactical value in co-opting the group. So that is how the British are involved, because I noticed he was like, oh yeah, the British, they developed the Muslim Brotherhood. And I was like, wait a minute. Let me go. Let me go back and research that. So even with Promethean, if there's something that's going on there that I really just don't understand, I dig, because I want to make sure that have an understanding. So when I give this information to you guys, I'm held accountable. To me, that's just how journalism works. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But for the most part, I try to make sure that I'm giving you guys information so you are well equipped, right? That has been my commitment since I started doing this. Now, do we have time? I don't know. I'm going to make some time. Hopefully we have time to go over this. But this is what I wanted to go over yesterday. I just did not get to it, and it looks like complete gibberish on the screen because it's not big enough. So Congressman Keith Self and Chip Roy launched Sharia-Free America Caucus. So this is real. And this was back in December. This is something that I did not hear about. But U.S. Representative Keith Self of Texas, District 3, and Chip Roy, Texas, District 21, officially launched the Sharia-Free America Caucus into the House of Representatives, an effort to counter the alarming rise of Sharia in the United States. Sharia is a dominating force that is not compatible with the U.S. Constitution. The formation of the caucus has earned the support of U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville and the leading voice of the Senate against Sharia. And I'm glad that they are actually laying the groundwork for this, because if people don't realize, Sharia law does run contrary to constitutional law. Now, they keep trying to hide it and say, oh, it's just our religion. No, it's not. You follow it as law. You have your own courts that are not in alignment with the United States. You can't do that. Not here. And then say, well, we're all under the Constitution, but we're going to do things separately. We're going to just handle it. No. There are many places you can do what you're doing, but you can't do that here. Can't do that here. And I want every single Sharia court shut down. And anybody who was involved in putting it together and anybody who was involved in attending it, they all need to be denaturalized and deported, and they never need to be back on the soil again. You need to go. You got to go. Because you want to do things that way, that's fine. You just can't do that here. Because you're not American citizens at that point. You're on American soil, but you're not American citizens. You got to go. And that's it. Like we don't align, right? And so I also wanted to show you guys this video. Now, this is from PBS, and this is about anti-Islamic rhetoric from GOP politicians, and it sparks concerns. So let's get into this video.
We know you can consistently turn to GPB for the news and information you need to stay informed and connected to the world around you and events happening here at home. And because GPB belongs to you, we're so grateful for your trust in sharing stories that matter to you and your neighbors. Learn about our news programming at gpb.org, and if you can, make it get.
Okay, I got to get through this commercial. I'm just going to mute it. It's got to mute it. Yeah, still through PBS.
For 25 years.
Come on. All these commercials are horrible. I just want to play the video. I should have downloaded it. But, some videos you can't download off of URLs like this. Okay, there we go.
They're confronting a new surge of hateful rhetoric here at home, amplified online and echoed by Republican lawmakers. Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles posted that Muslims don't belong in American society. Florida Congressman Randy Fine wrote this: "We need more Islamophobia, not less. Fear of Islam is rational." And Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville paired images of 9/11 with New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, saying, quote, "The enemy is inside the gates." Civil rights advocates and Democratic lawmakers have condemned the remarks as dangerous and openly bigoted. We're joined now by Maya Berry, Executive Director of the Arab American Institute. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having us, Jeff.
When you hear and read some of the comments from Republican lawmakers right now, what stands out to you most?
I mean, to be honest, the initial response is just how broken our democracy is. I feel it in a very personal way in terms of the targeting of the American Muslim community like this, the scapegoating of a community like this. But the fact that it's coming from elected officials who have American Muslim constituents who should understand with greater clarity how their rhetoric is perhaps different than mine or yours. And yet they feel very comfortable continuing to engage in this, stoking fear and putting communities and individuals at risk.
Does the rhetoric we're hearing now, does this represent an escalation, or is this part of a longer pattern in American politics?
So I think that's a really important observation. Communities being scapegoated at different times for different reasons is certainly a pattern in our country. What's different here, and I would even suggest worse than what we saw post 9/11, is that after the terror attacks in 9/11 happened, you had elected officials, a president who went to a mosque within a couple of days of those attacks and said, do not target your fellow Americans. This is not who we are. This is not what we're going to do. Now, obviously, there are policies that ensued that securitized a community, that treated it as a potential security threat moving forward, and then really harmed the relationship between those individuals and their fellow country people. But what I would say is that when the largest office of the land, the presidential bully pulpit, is being used to tell their fellow Americans, do not scapegoat those communities, that's very, very different than what we see today. The single largest crime or hate crime data that we had that targeted both actually Arab Americans and American Muslims came after 9/11. The second largest numbers came after the 2015 and 2016 years, which is the beginning of President Trump's initial campaign and running for office. So there is certainly, I think, a decision among some that this rhetoric is helpful. It gives them viral moments. It helps them raise money. That, to me, is why I keep emphasizing that you should care about this, because it is harmful to a community. But you should also care about this because I think it is indicative of how problematic and how fragile our democratic institutions are right now.
And you have some defending their remarks by pointing to these recent attacks allegedly carried out by Muslim men, the car ramming of a Michigan synagogue, the shooter at Old Dominion University last week. President Trump, who you mentioned, he was on Brian Kilmeade's Fox radio show last week. Take a listen to what he said.
They're sick people, and a lot of them were let in here. They shouldn't have been let in. Others are just bad. They go bad. Something wrong. There's something wrong there. So genetics are not exactly, they're not exactly your genetic. It's one of those problems.
I want to ask you to respond to that. And there can be legitimate concerns about how people become radicalized and then carry out acts of violence. There's a separate question around how leaders address that without turning it into sweeping claims, derogatory claims about millions of Americans.
Look, I'm not going to argue that someone who resorts to violence, like we saw in the horrific attack in Michigan or the shooting in Virginia, isn't perhaps sick in some way. There's something wrong there, without a doubt. The difference, though, is that no one would suggest that we engage in that kind of talk when we talked about the six shooting, the temple shooting in Oak Creek. No one said that when there was a shooting in South Carolina. No one said that when we were talking about the devastating killing of congregants at the Tree of Life Synagogue, or Charlottesville, Virginia, where Heather Heyer was killed, or the supermarket in El Paso. There have been systematic ways in which our country has increasingly moved with some level of comfort.
And let's just pause that for a second, because some of those shootings happened because people were trying to believe there was something they were not. That happened within the trans community, some of those shootings, right? Some shootings were racially motivated, that they said, like the shopping center in Texas. You want to blame the guns, not the people, not the rhetoric happening. But the difference, and she should have never conflated that to what the shootings were last week, because we're talking about a separate issue. We are talking about people, and it's not all people that practice Islam. It's the people that practice Islam that want to be under Sharia law. Like, it's a completely different conversation. It's completely different. And people don't want to have it. And she just wants to lump everybody together. We have a problem here. We have people here who hate the people here on the soil. You got to go. You got to go. This land does not belong to you. Okay? If you're going to be an American citizen, then be that. But don't hide under the privilege of being an American citizen while you are at the same time trying to destroy the country. There's a difference. Sorry. Anywhere Sharia law goes, it destroys everything in its path. It destroyed Iran. Destroyed it to where it's at now. Okay? I don't want anything like that on the soil here. I want it eradicated now. Yeah, my people have been here since pre-1776. I want this evil gone. Now, we have had mass deportations before. I've talked about it here on the show.
The political violence. It's really very alarming. There were 2 assassination attempts on President Trump. There was a legislator and her husband that were killed in Minnesota. The question is, why do we take those individual incidents and understand there to be a problem that our country has to address and not suggest that we develop a different relationships with white supremacists, for example, who've engaged with those and start saying that we need to, what went wrong? How do we take away their citizenship? What's the denaturalization process? None of that happens except when it is looking at American Muslims and sometimes Arab Americans.
Well, on that point, I want to ask you this, because in the past, party leaders have taken action against members of Congress for racist and extremist rhetoric. That was the case back in 2019 when then Speaker Kevin McCarthy booted Steve King off of his committees for racist rhetoric. Fast forward to the present moment, there doesn't appear to be that same level of accountability. What's the impact of that?
And again, Muslims are not a race of people. They are people that practice Islam. So they need to stop playing the race game. Now, you can say his comments were disparaging. You can say they were prejudicial. They were prejudiced, right? You can say that they were discriminatory. But to call somebody a racist, they have to be involved in an act of racism. They keep misusing this word, and it is really disgraceful.
No, to the contrary, there's no censure. There are no committees, assignments being withdrawn. And in fact, in the case of Congressman Randy Fine, the day he actually said, starve them all, is the day that he was appointed to the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And you have a situation where the House Speaker, instead of saying this kind of rhetoric must stop, it's harmful to our fellow Americans and we ought not to engage in it, he said there's a legitimate fear about demanding Sharia law in our country. Sharia law is a concept within like a moral or religious code that applies to me personally. It would never apply to you or anyone else if they weren't Muslim. It dictates things like our prayer or our marriage processes or burials. So this idea.
She's lying.
That we're
and by the way, they're allowed to lie.
Going to take something like that, and the speaker would suggest this is the reason why his members would get away with saying the kinds of things that they said is just intellectually dishonest and morally reprehensible.
Beyond the rhetoric, are you seeing signs that these attitudes are influencing policy?
Without a doubt, there have been some pretty significant setbacks in terms of basic civil rights protections and First Amendment protection rights. But I would focus more on, at this point, frankly, I go back to Congress, because certainly I'm not suggesting the executive is working great, but the issue with Congress is it's not just that a member tweets something this reprehensible. Look at the remarks they're giving on the House floor. Look at the questions and comments they make during congressional hearings. It's not just about like they need to engage or behave in ways that are decent. It's really about a structural problem within the body itself. It's not passing budgets on time. It's not passing laws. There's no congressional oversight. Our country just went to war without a war powers resolution. But what do they find time to do? They find time to sit and tell us that we need to fear our fellow Americans.
Maya Berry, Executive Director of the Arab American Institute. Thank you for your perspectives.
Yeah. And you know what? Having a healthy, it's called a healthy fear. So I just wanted to play this last video real quick to get this in.
Why Muslims vote Democrats. I just found this video, which is amazing, eye-opening, and I hope you guys check it out. Watch this.
When I was an extremist, Islamist, fundamentalist, I would only vote left. Why is that?
I saw them as very stupid. I would fear the conservatives because they come with principle. That's not someone they can brainwash. But the left, I know they have no values and no principles to begin with. I dare you to find one Islamic extremist that votes for Donald Trump. Never do it. They'd give their vote to the leftist who wants to run around in pride parades. And Islamic extremists are against gays and homosexuals and transgenders, but they want the left to go and get busy with that. And Omar, she's fighting for abortion rights. My body, my choice. Yes, go do that. Go do it. But would she have an abortion? Never. Would she kill a Muslim in her stomach? Never.
What is the fundamentalist and jihadi agenda for America?
The future of America has to be Muslim.
By the way, if you like this kind of content and you're not following me yet, what are you waiting for? Let's go.
He's funny. But yeah, he said all those things. Now she's up here saying all the, oh, but they're just so innocent. No, they're not. No, they're not. And these are the things that we have to see through. The lies. Okay? Sharia law does not align with our Constitution. They do not align with us. And again, here's the problem. You can't have your own separate court system in the United States. We have a court system, and that is it. You're not going to have a separate court system and say, oh, well, these are our religious beliefs. No, they're not. No, they're not. Stop lying. That's the part that everybody is woken up to, and they're like, oh no, y'all gotta go. I'm not saying you can't have Sharia courts, you just can't have them here. You can practice Sharia law all you want to, you just can't do that here in the United States. And so I'm very grateful that these two congressmen, and especially Keith Self and Chip Roy, that they have launched a Sharia-free American caucus, because we need one, because we need one. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for joining me here on Mighty Men Thursday. And we will be back tomorrow with our Prayer with Friday. So remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.